3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Vegan Steve Music. Hit that. We're talking about digital audio workstations today. So click that old subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And we're back. We're back in. Okie dokie. So yesterday, DAW, digital audio workstations. Some ones you may have heard of: Pro Tools, Ableton. It's the new kid in the block. Well, there's constantly new kids on the block, and they're constantly coming and going. There you are. So you open up the DAW, file new track, Control N. Oh, it's not even there. Right. But yeah, some stuff went over yesterday. Thinking of the DAW as like a 4-track recorder, and going over some things they call plugins, which are tools like hammers and chisels. So some ones you might want to look into are the compressor, the gate, and the equalizer. With using a compressor, you can bring stuff up to really loud volume without them distorting. With the gate, once the volume reaches below a certain threshold, the gate will shut and there will be no sound. So it's very good for background noise. I don't have a gate currently turned on with this recording, so you may notice a lot of extra humming, birds whistling and so on. You can get rid of that with a gate. I like a little bit of atmosphere, but you can turn that off with a gate and just go, just cuts it off once the volume goes below a little threshold. You can hear a gate turning on and off a lot, particularly with rap artists like maybe Jay-Z or someone. So it cuts off sometimes the starts of the words and the ends of the words get cut off, because the gate is so hard, especially in live performances. The gate is so like on and off. The ratio isn't like a low ratio like 2 to 1 if you're looking at fucking 10 to 120, and tackle release like on and off. So what does all that mean? It just means it's a noticeable gate, so maybe you can hear it banging instead of a soft closing gate. So compressors just control dynamics, distance between loud and soft. Piano forte. Gates keep all the noise down, so when you listen to the recording you don't hear all the time. You don't hear all 120 tracks playing at the same time. You can only hear whatever track is playing, whatever instrument is playing. So maybe it's a guitar solo and the vocal. That's all you can hear, because every other track is being muted, turned off. And this was a very big important thing in tape and so on, that you had gates, because otherwise it'd just be hum all over the place. There's auto gates used on all sorts of technology, such as Zoom. Everyone's voice is gated, which means turned off apart from the main person speaking. And then if someone starts talking, their volume's allowed to be added, but only if they talk loudly, as in above the noise of 0. So stuff like sniffles or something might be not on, but a hello will go through. So that's gates. Compressors, you use compressors to record as loud as possible, because people were terrified of a thing called signal to noise ratio, which is just having all this fucking hum and noise and everything. 60 hertz electrical hum, noise from the fan in the room, squeaky floorboards, people talking in the next room, birds chirping. So you can bring stuff up to as loud as you want with these compressors, and you can hear stuff all the time. If stuff appears really, really loud on a recording, it's because it's heavily compressed, normally. You can keep it at a clear, consistent volume. You can keep it at one certain place on the sound stage, as opposed to going up and down. Some things that so plugins, yeah. 3 plugins. Gate. Another thing you can do with the EQ is roll off the low end, which is all that trucks going by in the background and stuff. So people generally roll off the low end after 125 is it hertz, is it? Cycles, which I think is like a low E, possibly on a bass, or it's a low E. 80 hertz is a low E in a bass. So that again is it's called housekeeping. You're just tidying up the session or whatever it is. Trimming is a very, very important thing, and all that is when you have your vocal track or something, you're just you're trimming off in between where they're singing. You're just it's like a gate. Alright, so you have a gate, and once again the gate stops this noise coming through, so you can the track is only active when there's the threshold has been broken, gone over. If you want, trimming is another way of doing that. You can just go in and draw in, automate the volume level, so anytime you're not making a sound, the volume is drawn out, and that way you won't lose any transients, which is the start of the sound, that initial click. You won't lose any transients, which are very, very important. Transients have feelings too. Alright, I'm going to stick to serious mode. Transients, attack delay, can't get into that right now. Your 4 main equalizer bands, keep that in mind. Some knobs on the compressors, maybe just stick it in auto. Hope for the best. Tracks. So these tracks, all 4 tracks, are stemmed into a master bus, which is just like the output. So your 4 tracks, they each have their own volume, and generally you can pan. Now panning is when you turn the volume from one speaker to the other, so panning. Alright, so that means you can have, if you just want one voice, only one speaker, you pan it hard left or hard right. And this is a lot of fun. So that's dividing the sounds among the 2 speakers. So generally you want just everything straight, dead in the middle, and your volume of everything just at 0. Ideally, when you're recording, don't go above 6 dB. Record at minus 6 dB. If you're on digital, I personally never do this, but this is if you want to follow the textbook. I generally record hot, so I compress on the way in. I do everything on the way in, and then have it there ready to go. But you can't always have analog gear with your compressors and stuff. And right now I'm doing it all digitally. So right now, for example, there's 2 microphones in the room. They're going into an analog digital converter. So I'm talking. The diaphragm on the microphone is moving in and out in sympathy with my voice. Those electrical impulses of positive to negative variations, all the variations between 1 and 0, being turned into more 1 and 0s for the analog digital converter. That's going into the computer. The computer is reading those 1s and 0s to plot points on a wave. My God, analog to digital converters blow my mind. And that wave is like a perfect sine wave, a perfect circle. Woo! like just think of a wave of water, light, or any of those things. Depending on the bit rate, which is how many times per second you take a photograph of that circle. So the circle can end up being very squarey and like look very. Do you ever see those bit crushed like Game Boy pixelated images? They can look very pixelated if you will, rather than looking smooth and like super high definition. And that was the problem with the early digital, sounded kind of harsh. So unlike the digital converters, microphone into analog to digital converter. This is called a signal chain. Alright, so I'm here talking, that's the source. The recorder, the fucking microphones are going into a preamp which turns up the volume. Then that is being brought into the sound card to turn it into digital information, because we're not going into a 4-track recorder or something. That's going into the L computer. And all those ones and zeros are being plotted on a wave and being turned into all sorts of jiggly lines. And those jiggly lines are then being played out through the effects and the volumes. So you might have a bit of compression there, a bit of echo. It all goes into a summing mixer, which is just the output volume. So that's a mixer is just a way of organising all the different tracks. So you just go like, would I want this one louder? Where do I want this one softer? Just faders, think volume knobs, all that stuff. Each track has a volume knob. They go into the master, so they all feed into one track at the end, just to make things simple, and then that goes out, just left and right. Alright. Panning knob. If you're ever on a mixer, you got panning knob, EQ, compression, possibly a gate if you're lucky. And then you might have a spatial effect, which will either be delay or reverb. I'd recommend you go for delay. Sure, fuck it, go for reverb. Go mad. It changes and trends with her. Yeah. So that's the delay and reverb are a method of separating the space on the soundstage. Alright, so instead of just having everything right jammed up in your ears, you can have one thing far away, one thing panned like way over there. You can have one thing panned a few miles down the road. You can have all sorts of things. Alright. So yeah, soundstage. You got forward and back, which is dry, no echo. Then the more echoes and modulation on the echoes, delays, or if you will, the further back it will appear. The later the reflections. Buzzwords, pre-delay. Right. So you get your track, it's all sounding, you got your 4 tracks there, maybe it's just one track of you singing or whatever it is. Goes out to your mixer. Happy days. You can't have the output volume go past 0, because if it does, it'll distort. So you want to have it going as close to 0 as possible without touching 0. So this is a time where you'd use something that it's basically a compressor with a high ratio. So instead of so much bending the sound to turning the volume down, it kind of hits it like a brick wall and just goes, nope, oh, that's far enough, down you go, whoop. Really catches it, that's a limiter. So that's just a compressor with a high ratio, it's quite harsh. And that just stops your equipment breaking. So there you are. Then using dithering or whatever you're into, you can use it. The sound gets converted through your digital audio converter, digital to audio, and that gets turned into an electrical impulse, which goes to your speakers. Once it's in your speakers, the volume is turned up, it's amplified because it's a low voltage. low enough. So you need a preamp in the speakers to turn it up from low volume up to high volume. From the output, from the earphone jack on your laptop into the speakers. You just need something. It's an amp. Just turns it up, right? Turns up the volume. Grand. And then you have the speaker itself. A lot of people think it's just a speaker and there's no amp, but you need something to turn up the electrical impulse. And then those ones and zeros, after being are turned back into a wave, down the signal chain into the speakers, and the computer has turned those ones and zeros into sound waves, which cause the speaker to go in and out, hopefully in sympathy with each other if you don't have phasing issues. And there you are, recording. Isn't that interesting? Some other little things to look out for. Clipping, just lights going red. That means it's going to distort. Some words people use as gain staging. I love distortion in all fashions, but sometimes the client may not want distortion, and in that case, get new clients. Way or I don't know, whatever you want to do, that's fine. I'm just joking around. In general, digital distortion and clipping considered unpleasant because it's harsh and doesn't really occur in the natural world, and the other analog distortion from electrical equipment and so on is considered nice and pleasant to the ear. I think it adds distortion on the second harmonic or something, and it's just more pleasing to the ears. It doesn't go as high into the frequency. There aren't as much harmonics in the higher frequency, so it's just more pleasing on the ear, less harsh. And less fatiguing on the ear, I think is the good way to put it. It's less fatiguing in the ear. So, it doesn't matter what digital audio workstation you use, just a nice big fancy word, DAW. Open it up, it has a play button, stop button, pause button, record button, back and forward. They all use the same thing. Having said that, I'm very picky about which ones I use, so I'm a hypocrite. But that just comes down to which, it's not even preference often, it's just whichever one you got used to first. There's other extensions of the audio workstation for doing stuff like recording MIDI, which is musical implementation, digital instrument. Damn, can't remember. MIDI, M-I-D-I, digital interface. Musical instrument, digital interface. I hope it's that. And all that does is if you're playing a keyboard note, it records all the notes when you played them, how you played them, and then you can play that information. That information has been recorded, and then you can play that information through an electronic instrument called a virtual instrument, VSTI. So you could send it through like a trumpet, or you could send it through a piano, you could send it through a choir. So that's where people end up going down these rabbit holes for 6 months working on one song for 6 months, because they have the one thing, like, that's cool, but what would that sound like on this instrument? Oh no, it would sound better if it was on this instrument. Oh no, it would be better if it was, and then, because you just keep going. So that's for the what's that called? The psychology of recording. It's best to have your projects done pretty quick because you get lost. Too many influences, too many cooks spoil the broth, and ideally work like bang it out in one session, one day. Because otherwise you'll kind of forget what the flip you're doing, what was the angle. But do you know what? That's just ideal. No one ever really does that. People go back and tweak stuff, and the song's never finished, and all that good stuff. So a lot of the things I'm talking about are general. It doesn't really matter what interface you're using, whether it's 4-track recorder or just even the thing on your phone. Yeah, okay. Happy with that. Think I don't want to melt your brains too much. There's a lot of philosophies going around that digital recording, because of its editability, to manipulate the performance and stuff. Some people think it's taken the human aspect out of music. Other people think that the musicianship has gone down because people don't have to get the performance right, they can go in and fix it later. Other people love it because it catches the moment straight away. You can catch the moment and then kind of fix the boring stuff like tempo afterwards. So it's just a tool. It's like a hammer. It doesn't have any emotions or opinions. Use it if you want. Use it with a conjunction of other tools. Other people use tape machines as just effects and record into the digital thing. You can have it synced up. The other cool thing is you can have your DAW synced up with multiple instruments all working together, like synthesizers or arpeggios all playing at the same time. It's very good. You'll like it. The learning curve is something like 80-20. Sorry, so what I mean by that is 80% of people who try to learn DAWs just give up in the first month because it's just too hard. So I guess just try to keep it simple. Just start a track, record. You'll have to go into preferences. So probably options, preferences, and then you can sort out your inputs, outputs, what sound card you're using, all that stuff. Alright, that's it. Over and out. Have a great day. Vegan Stephen podcast. This particular thing was Vegan Stephen music, but that's it. Check out the merch, Patreon, all that good stuff.